I've got a different question for you. So a lot of research that's conducted around fascia really focuses on the deep fascia. So that is the dense connective tissue that surrounds the muscles. Increasingly, we're having lots and lots more really interesting work going and coming out around hyaluron, around the fluid. Now, actually, the superficial fascia, which is the area just underneath the skin, between the skin and the muscle, is really the area that you are addressing with the fascia blaster. And this is, of course, where we have adipose tissue, where the fat cells sit, where we have a whole, almost like a honeycomb network of very, very thin, dense connective tissue. And using tools like the fascia blaster, but also other tools, disrupts that superficial fascia. So my question to you is, if you could ask a researcher any question about the superficial fascia, what is it about that superficial layer where we have the connective tissue, where we have fluid, where we have a lot of pain receptors sit within that area, a lot of inflammatory and mast cells and so on. So lots and lots of activity happens within that superficial layer. So if you could ask a researcher a question about that superficial fascia, what would that be? What would you want to know about that superficial layer?
Well, just like everybody else, I'm fascinated with the deep fascia. However, when we did our own studies and were able to look at this under ultrasound imaging, I used to say, I thought what fascia blasters did was take that very surface tissue, and if it had micro adhesions or even adhesions, from the skin into that first layer of muscles, I thought it was like a hairbrush. I thought it would brush it out. But then what we saw in ultrasound imaging is places that the fascia blaster don't reach, or other tools that are used from the outside, was we saw remodeling all the way down to the bone. So the question that I would have for researchers would be basically, what do you think about that? What do you think the mechanism is that is done at a more surface level that is making that impact, into the deeper fascia? And I would also want to know, because obviously we didn't study this in our study, but I've been reading so much about the quantum nature of fascia. I'm so curious, could we transcend bones? For instance, could you palpate a scalp and impact those layers of meninges? Or could you palpate a thigh and remodel tissue in the shoulder? Because to me, to this day, at least from what I've researched, we don't have the answer to that. And we don't have the answer to what the mechanism is. So let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely.